Hi everyone and welcome back. So NestJS में almostly we have already covered the crash course. All the building blocks, all the basic fundamentals of the NestJS. Now let's revisit our agenda or the plan which we want to cover in the basics and whatever the topics, whatever the leftover from those topics वो हम अभी recently videos में cover करते हैं like custom provider I know and all the building blocks we can just revisit. Then how we do the testing, how we manage the environment variables in the NestJS. And these are a couple of topics which we need to focus on. And then we'll close the basics like the crash course. And then we'll move to some little bit more intermediate topics. उसके अंदर हम थोड़ा validations को advanced level पे देखते हैं, database connectivity, writing APIs which can read, write database into database. Database can be of different type. All those things will start coming up. Let's see what all topics we have covered and what all topics we need to revisit. Okay, so you can see here basic building blocks, setting up the projects, dependency injection, controller, route, services, providers, all the basic building blocks like interceptors, filters, pipe, building a basic REST API using controller router, then implementing a custom provider. That is something we need to revisit. We haven't done that. And then middlewares, like we can also revisit like custom validation pipes and how the validation is done, then middleware testing, deployment, and additionally like the NestJS configuration. Till now we have seen that how to manage. We haven't seen how to manage the runtime configurations like which we want to feed using process.env. Currently we are starting the application on port 3000, but what if I want to pass the port number? So I will be using, normally in Node.js world, we use .env. There is something called NestJS config. So we will take a look onto that, NestJS modules and different tools and all. So here we have a user, task module. We can also create a user module. We just can create a simple folders inside domain and can keep adding the domains. This is like my folder structure: auth, core, domains, shared, lib, swagger, right? So instead I will create a folder user and inside that I can populate the same thing. I will rename the files and folders, okay, because I'm talking about user. So building the APIs are simple. We are just creating controller and then you can write the methods, different methods: get, put, post, delete, patch. These are the main primary HTTP methods. You can create many more. Okay, here still we are using the same in-memory database. Okay, and here we are defining the API tags for the Swagger, okay, user APIs. So Swagger will create a separate group for user APIs. Controller route has been updated at line 46 and now it will be user service. Here we will be using a user service and that has been injected inside a controller and it will be user controller, user service. Rename the user service. So why I'm talking about this is just like a folder structure and how we create the components, how we create the controller services, modules, and the DTOs, because DTOs is responsible for validation. Models, at the end when we are going to talk about database, models will be your entity database. Mongoose model, TypeORM entity, SQLize entity, that will be your schema model. Controller is a router where you are defining the get, put, post, user service, injectable service, where you are going to create all the methods to create, update, delete, all different operations will be done there. And DTO is used for the payload validations. So here let's clean up this one. So we can have a user set of APIs also. So here we have now user APIs. I will just start the application and then you can see a separate group has been created in the Swagger. So NestJS extensively use Swagger. And it's all about using the appropriate tags to populate information on the Swagger. You can expose all the request methods. You can also provide a sample JSON payload for your post APIs and what is the outcome is going to be. You can also provide that information. So it's easy for the front-end developer to integrate your APIs. Now next thing we are talking about is, let's go to our services. Here we are just talking about simple get, put, post, which we have exposed. So we have API v1 task and we have API v1 user. Okay, I think it is using role guard, but we have already discarded. So remove these auth guard because this particular routes, API v1 users are not falling in the middleware. So we are not setting the mock request.user object. So your auth guard is failing right now. Now it will just give us the data. Let's see what is the error. I will just start the application again. So here now I'm getting the right amount of data, like which is just a mock list of users. Here task module, user module, and in the providers. Root, there are at the root level there is no provider, but at the user module we have a user service which has been injected here. So this is simple. This is how we can create a new domain, task domain, user domain, which are like totally independent, right? And you can also define the dependency. Okay, task module depends on the user module. And what if you are doing a cyclic dependency here? User module depend on the task module depend on the user module. Okay, this is a cycle, man. This won't work in the NestJS. और तुम्हारे पास क्या आएगा? Cyclic dependency error, fundamental circular dependency error. I mean, you can fix it. Forward ref add करना पड़ता है, but we can just remove it for now because we don't need it, and your application is fine. ठीक है? तो हमारे पास simple how we create a router using controller, how we are creating a module, how we are defining these methods http get, put, post, delete, and how are we taking the input like query parameter, request body, path parameter, all these things, how we can take input. So we have these special annotation @body, @param, @query, @request, @response. They are helping us to do all these things. Services, we have written a user service. Now custom provider and provider. Pipes, like we have covered exception filters and interceptors. So first let's talk about pipe. So pipe का concept थोड़ा misunderstood भी है. What is the pipe? It's not just a pipe. Pipe means it is helping us to transform the data. It can be a simple validation pipe which is doing a validation. This is validation pipe is inbuilt in the NestJS with the help of class validator. तो जब भी मुझे payload validate करना है तो I will always use validation pipe provided by NestJS. You can also create your own custom validation pipe. Other than that, you can also use a parse boolean pipe, parse int pipe, parse float pipe. So this is the controller. Here we have these different methods: get, put, post, delete. आप यहाँ पे body में देखोगे @body, payload, and create task DTO. And on top of that, I have already declared this use pipe, new validation pipe. So class validator is not automatically doing the validation, but we are telling the class validator to validate the DTOs. How? By writing line number 37 to 45. हमसे कह रहे हैं use pipe, validation pipe. आपको ये लिखना पड़ेगा so that जो आपने DTO ऐड किया है कंट्रोलर में, that will start using the validation. उसमें जो class validator में आपने लिखा है @is email, @is UUID, is defined, is string, that will only work when you have declared a use pipe. Use pipe internally using the validation pipe to validate your request body. Not only request body, request parameter, query parameter, path parameter, body, everything you can validate using that. So this is what we are defining here. And whitelist transform true. Transform true ka why, what is the need? So in short, whenever you are passing anything in the path parameter or query parameter, even for the boolean and number, everything passed as a string. So transform true means if you are passing a number as a string, like in single quotes 22, it automatically converts that into number. Like here, this is how we pass the validation: is string, is defined, min length. So they will work only when we have put a use pipe at the controller level or at the method level or at the application level. The one beautiful part about NestJS है कि you can set things at the controller level, method level, or at the application level, like app.usePipe, app.useGuard, app.useInterceptor. ठीक है? कंट्रोलर में करना हो तो use pipe at the controller level, और method में लेना हो तो I think there is a @usePipe, the same annotation you can use at the controller level also. So यहाँ पे what I'm doing is here I'm trying to understand how can I add a validations. So there are some inbuilt pipe, parse int pipe है, parse float pipe है, validation pipe. Validation pipe perform automatic data validation for @body, query, param. Parse int pipe convert a string into integer. Parse boolean pipe, parse float pipe convert the type into what you are needing, like parse boolean to boolean, parse float to float, right? These are pre-built decorators which are used for validation. Now let's see how can I use it. You can use it wisely, like here @delete. I am writing HTTP delete and I will be passing delete at the end. I mean, okay, delete this particular ID. So here I want to validate that whatever the ID I'm passing, that should be integer. How can I validate? I can use a parse_int pipe. Let's say if you are passing ABC, that is obviously not an integer. It will throw 400 bad request. Otherwise, you can also by default you can just do a DTO validation, task by ID DTO, and in task by ID DTO we have this ID as a number. So there are two ways. Either you can use the parse_int, parse boolean, parse float pipe, and you can just write that in the controller method like we are doing param, like which we have done. Or you can just use simple DTOs, and inside DTO define these properties like I'm passing ID. Okay. Next thing is this is all about validation pipe. Next thing is the custom pipe. Okay. Pipe में validation pipe, parse float, parse boolean, ये basic चीज है. How can I create my own custom pipe, let's say, which validates email, which is being passed either in the query parameter or a path parameter? How can I validate it? So it's a simple class pipe which implements a pipe transform, and it will have a transform method which is coming from pipe transform interface. Abhi agar a transform, there is a regex and we are just validating whatever the input you are passing, that is following that regex or not. It's injectable. So this pipe, I mean, we just let's change it name to the email validator pipe. How can you use this email validator pipe in your controller, right? Because this is a custom pipe. How can we register it? In the same way we were registering parse_int pipe, parse float pipe. If you want to register it at an application level, you can do something like this. But most of these times, these pipes are specific to a controller, which is taking. Now, if I apply this email for the whole application, does it make sense? Because not all the methods I'm writing HTTP post, right? So we can just put this at the controller level or a particular method level in the router. So here, this is the built-in pipe. Here, this is how we are writing parse_int pipe. Same thing, you can just convert into a custom email validator pipe. So here we are using the body. Inside body, you might be passing some parameter. So here I have added the validation pipe at the controller level. Use pipe, email validation pipe. So let's see what it is doing. Email validation pipe is validating the email, right? So it's, I mean, according to me, it's better if we can place it at the particular controller method, because that might be taking email as an input, and it's better to put it there. So let's say here we are passing this as a query parameter. In the query parameter, I have email. So I can just pass that as an email. Either you can create a DTO, simple, export class, task query parameter DTO, and instead of name, you have to pass an email. And you can just define all the validation like is email, is defined, is min length. All the is email is more than enough, because if you are passing email and valid is email is valid, then it is obviously defined, it is obviously string. And task query parameter DTO. So just change this to task query parameter DTO. And you got the parameter. Parameters has the project name inside it. So let's say how both these types are different. Either you are passing queries, something like this, line number 65 and line number 66. Both are totally different. 65 is just like, okay, we are using external DTO class. In 66, in the query itself, for the email property, I have defined that there should be email validation pipe. So email validation pipe has been applied in the query string, where you have to pass email as a query parameter. Now next, other things are like exception filters, interceptors, and middleware. I can create another middleware like authorization middleware. It will also do kind of same thing. It will check get authorization from the headers. Then if authorization is not there, then authorized exception, and then finally mock the request.user object, that it is of type admin role and all these things. So what we are doing here is, in this is the middleware how we are going to write. In this middleware, you will get a bearer token. And at the end, what you will do, you will write some authentication service, you will pass this bearer token, and you will validate this token against your JSON Web Token secret key. If this is valid, then you will allow user to access the defined routes. Currently, we are not doing any validations. I'm just returning whatever I have received. Then we have also covered HTTP exception filters, right? So whatever the exception being thrown from the app, how we are going to handle them. The HTTP exception filter can help you. This is the interceptor. Interceptor is only just intercepting the request, and if there is any additional attribute you want to capitalize it, that is being done by the interceptor. So interceptor, filters, pipe, middleware, all these building blocks we have covered in depth. Now it's time to talk about the further topics.